everyone. Hello, I hope you enjoyed your break. We are going to have a fantastic afternoon, just like we had a great morning. The Hero Roundtable means so much to me. I am so honored to be here, especially because, as many people have mentioned, this is the 10th anniversary of the Hero Roundtable. And so I was at the first one, and so 10 years, gosh, we have a lot to catch up on, don't we? We have a lot to catch up on. I've done a lot of stuff in the last 10 years. I really have. So I'm going to give a little recap, okay? And then we're going to jump into some stuff. So I saw a lot of people getting bullied, especially cyberbullied in my community. And I never got bullied myself, but I thought, this ain't right. Something's wrong about this. And so I tried to figure out, why do people bully? Just in general. And then from there, go on and focus on cyberbullying. And people bully because they want attention, validation, and respect. Those are normal things to want. Everyone wants those things, right? But they were getting it through negative ways, by putting other people down, hurting other people, so on and so forth. Bullying people. So I decided, how can we give people all these in a positive manner? So I decided to start an anonymous Twitter account that complimented people, thereby giving them attention, validation, and respect. It worked. Bullying went down at my school, people liked the idea, and similar accounts spread across the county, country, and then world. We went from just a small little town in Iowa to over 100 countries and 6 continents. I always joke that if the penguins ever start bullying each other, we'll go down to Antarctica. Thus far, they've been pretty good. But one of my proudest achievements is that we also expanded to have a suicide hotline, and we average about 1 to 2 people a week saved from suicide. So I'm very proud of that. But I'm not just here to talk about the last 10 years. I'm going to talk about the last 3 years. And I think it's not a controversial thing to say that the past 3 years have been pretty memorable. Frankly, you could write a book just on 2020, right? And, you could probably write a book about March 2020, wherever you are in the world, A lot of stuff happened. And I think sometimes we're really guilty of thinking we exist in a vacuum, that there exists no context for what is happening and no future. But I want to assure you that life and the current times are a story told before and ever told. And I just want you to put a bookmark there. Just keep that in the back of your mind. You don't have to write anything down, but just keep it in the back of your mind for the next 8 minutes. I think we're in a time of great hope. The pandemic is over, and we are trying to figure out what comes next. What does a pandemic-free future look like? And I think about other times of hope in our history. For example, 1945, World War II ends, and the world comes together to create a new world order. And it's a new world order with a commitment to peace. I don't know how well we did on that, but that was the hope. Or you take the information age, the dawn of it, where you have connections and all the information you ever want at your fingertips whenever you want. That was a time of hope. And I think that everyone can think of other times of hope in their own life, but also in history. And I think it's really important to look at those times of hope, because they could have happened differently. They could have gone a different way, which is pertinent because they will show up a different way. They will. And our redemption lies in our readiness. And this is especially true for change making. We have to be ready for tomorrow, but the good news is that tomorrow is today, because the change makers of today are young people. And they're not just the change makers of today, they're the change makers of the past. And the youth are not just the past or the present, but they're the future. And the future is not just the future, but it's the now. See, there's a lot of things going on here, but I just want to focus on this. Youth are not just the future, they're the now. They are the now. If you look at some of the most famous change makers right now, you have names like Malala, Greta, Joshua Wong. And I want to note that these people are not well known because they're young. They're well known because they're effective. They're good. They're good at what they do. And you can look in history too. We've been talking a little bit about history, and you look at American history. Some of the biggest change makers, we talk about them. We don't mention that they're young. You go back 200 years ago to the Revolutionary War. Alexander Hamilton, he was an old man at 21. Okay. Marquis de Lafayette, 18. Armistead, 15. You go back, or you go forward into the 1960s, and you have civil rights leaders who are carrying on that cry of all men are created equal. Many of them were under 18 as well. Many of them were. And you can go into social change movements around the world in between those two and after, and you'll find young change makers there too. Young people are creating change, not just now, and they won't just be doing it in the future, but they've done it in the past. This is not an exception to the rule. What is happening is not an exception to the rule. It is the rule. It is the rule. And I think young people are only now getting the recognition that they deserve. Only now. I worked on UN 2250. It's a resolution that was passed, and it acknowledges the global status of youth. So for the first time ever, across international policy, how young people are doing and how to help them is a consideration. And that's a huge step. That's an absolutely massive step. And it couldn't have come at a better time, quite honestly. There's a multi-generational tracking poll on how much how many people in a generation want to do good. So in the baby boomer generation, it was about 20%. In Gen X, it was about 45. Now we're up to 70 with the millennials. They haven't finished the data on Gen Z right now, but it's tracking to be even higher than 70. This is a generation, the one that's coming up, is a generation that cares and has a hunger to make the world better, unlike we've ever seen before. But here's the tragedy. They're not being helped. I'll go to schools, I'll go to different places, and I'll ask young people how an issue impacts them. So let's say it's food insecurity. I'll ask them, okay, are you impacted by food security? Not whether you're food insecure yourself, but whether it impacts you or someone you know, loved one, if it's in your community, if it's something that you notice. Most hands go up, vast majority actually. And then I'll ask them, okay, how many of you have a plan for it, to solve it? And a couple hands go down, but it's still a majority. But then I will ask, how many of you have an adult in your life who supports you in this plan? And almost every single hand goes down. Every single time. And it doesn't matter what issue, by the way. It doesn't really matter what issue. Just use food insecurity as an example. That is, without question, a massive waste of intellectual talent, of intellectual capacity, and it cheats not just the young person, it cheats all of us. Because if I were to tell you there is an issue, but good news is there are a whole group of people who are directly impacted by this issue, who know the issue very well, and have a plan to solve it, you'd say, that's great. That sounds like the ideal problem solver. And if I said to you, okay, but bad part of it is no one cares what they're doing. They're completely left out. You'd say that is that's foolish. And you're right. You'd be right. I think that what really stings about all this is that we've seen the potential of young people, not just in the past and not just with the big names, but on a day-to-day way. In our daily lives, we've seen it, and especially in the last 3 years since UN Resolution 2250 really took off. We've seen unprecedented growth in youth social entrepreneurship, but especially during the pandemic, when a lot of rules were thrown out. A lot of expectations were thrown out. It was much more about survival and who can do what. In sub-Saharan Africa, one of the most overlooked places in the entire world for pandemic response, young people were the ones leading the way on quarantine and sanitation efforts. And to international acclaim, this was not something that people forgot about. People knew that these campaigns were effective, but they just left out that the founder of it or the leader of it or the implementers of it were mainly young people. Going into South Asia, similarly during the pandemic, you saw across the subcontinent, young people were the ones leading the medicine delivery and also caseload reports, saving thousands, if not millions, of lives just there. People are forgetting about young people, and they shouldn't, because young people are doing just fine. Thinking into my own work, the amount of times that my team and I were discounted because we were young is absolutely crazy to think about. We had the numbers, we had the data, we had the results. We had a PhD dissertation written about us, but it always came down to us being too young. There was always an official reason, but then when we asked a few questions, it would always be, guys, sorry, you're too young. And I think about how different the work would have been if we hadn't had to spend so much time and so many resources on trying to convince would-be allies, people who are on our side, to help us. And that's why I'm really thankful for the Hero Roundtable. The Hero Roundtable is not one of those places. The Hero Roundtable, I think of it as a community of moons. Each one of us reflecting the brilliance of one another. Each one of us making the whole group brighter and brighter still. So thank you for that. Truly thank you for that. You are all making the world a better place just by being here, and then whatever you do after here. I do have an ask for everyone. For the young people, I want you to spend 10 seconds today, 10 seconds, to think of a problem and think of how you can solve it. It's not going to be the solution that fixes everything, but I just want you to get started. Just 10 seconds. And for the adults in the room, find the young people. Listen to them, talk to them. There's so many stories about how the youth are lethargic, they're lazy, they don't care. But I think a large part of that is because people are only looking for what they want to hear. People are saying things. You just have to figure out how you can listen instead of just hear to what they're saying. Because here's the thing. Young people are tired of the deafening roar of our society's silence on an array of issues. And they aren't going to take it anymore. We need to harness their power. We need to know that when they act, they're continuing a long line of, a long tradition of youth activism, of change making. And then with the other hand, they're pointing towards the future of what is possible. They are creating this era of hope. They are our hope. They're not the future, they're the now. Thank you.